Hi, I'm Adam Pacifico, and you're listening and watching The Leadership Enigma. Well, we're going from strength to strength. We have almost 300 videos on our YouTube channel, so do please check those out. And the statistics are showing us that we are going to get over 1 million listens this year, which is incredible. And it's a huge thank you to so many people for all the hard work. We've also got the brand new keynote, The Future of Leadership is Indeed Human, and we leverage loads of incredible multimedia excerpts from the studio, from the podcast in the keynote. So just contact us directly and we can talk to you about that too. But this episode, we're back to our CEO series, and I'm going to be talking to an amazing guest. I've waited a little bit of time to get him on the show, but he is indeed on the show and in the studio. I can see he's excited already. But as a founding member of Genpact 25 years ago and served as the CEO for 13 years. So this is very much part and parcel of our CEO series. In 1997, there were just 20 people and it was a pilot out of GE. But today, over 130,000 employees, over 5 billion in revenue, 800 global clients in 35 countries. Now that's a journey that we need to find out more about. So come back to me just after the break where I've got Tiger in the studio. I'll see you very, very soon. Hi, I'm Adam Pacifico and welcome to The Leadership Enigma, a world-ranked, award-winning podcast that's insatiably curious as regards what leaders do, how they do it, and importantly, why. We'll delve into the human doing, but even deeper into the human being and the power of human-centered leadership to drive sustainable change. So whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, corporate executive, each week we speak to global experts, academics, rising stars, ambitious upstarts and disruptors, as together we will discover that success leaves clues. Tiger, it's a huge warm welcome to the Leadership Enigma. How are you?
Great to be here, Adam. This has been a long time coming.
It has been a long time coming, and I'm so excited.
And what an amazing studio you have.
Now, listen, you are a consumer of learning. You are a consumer of podcasts. You've done many. You've consumed many. What do you think?
This is really cool. So first of all, as I was telling you, as I was walking in, it's nondescript. You know, you don't know of its existence.
Yeah.
And then you walk in and you say, wow, what is this?
It's deliberate, right?
And I have a view that the quality of sound and production, etc., will turn out to be amazing because I can feel it in my bones.
Well, there's no pressure there to the studio team in relation to that. Listen, I just introduced you as Tiger, but there's a story to your name. Let's start with that.
Yeah, Tiger is a nickname. My name is Tyagarajan. Grew up in Bombay.
Yep.
And the school I went to, the kids that I grew up with, belonging to all kinds of backgrounds, communities, religions, etc., turned to me one day when I was in, grade 1 and said, we can't pronounce your name. We just finished a poem, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright by William Blake.
Yes.
And they said, we'll call you Tiger because that seems like a short form for Tyagarajan. I said, whatever, doesn't matter.
And the rest is history.
And the reality is it's a name that can be remembered more easily than Tyagarajan, and that helps.
Do you find that there are lots of people now as you travel through life who just simply know you as Tiger and actually have never known your real name in the first place?
Oh, that's true. 100% true. And then you check into a hotel at 1 a.m. in the morning when you're traveling somewhere, particularly in the US, in the middle of wherever, and the reception person says, oh, I thought it's going to be Tiger Woods. And I said, no, it's not Tiger Woods. I'm sorry.
Have to manage the expectations, really. This is very much part and parcel of our CEO series because you have an incredible story to tell. And I always say this, I have to go backwards to go forwards. So just tell us a little bit about your start in corporate life and in the business world before we start to get towards that founding element of Genpact. So tell us how you decided to start where you started.
So I'm going to date myself, but that's okay.
That's all right.
Engineer by background,
Yep.
An undergrad, but never did engineering. Once I finished my engineering, I kind of fell in love with people and communication and storytelling and problem solving. So engineering taught me problem solving.
Right.
And excited about problem solving. And then I did my MBA. In those days in India, when I did it, I didn't have to have work experience to do it, so I did it. And my first job was at Unilever's subsidiary in India called Hindustan Lever, running sales teams,
Yep.
selling soaps and detergents and shampoos and so on across different states in India. And, I did that for 7 years and kept growing. And at some point in time, I ran the largest state in India. the largest region in India, which is the southern region.
Yes.
And learned a lot, predominantly about the way people behave, the way businesses
I was going to ask,
run.
what's your standout learning from that early phase of work? You said about 7 years worth.
So I'll tell you day two of my job.
Yeah.
Fresh out of school, no experience, unlike MBAs these days, and I'm given a team of 7 people to lead, and the 7 people range in age, and I was 23, range in age from 35 to 59.
Right.
And the 59-year-old was considered to be the god of selling in the company. And I'm supposed to be their boss, and I'm a kid. So I said, I have a suspicion if I don't start right on this, it's not going to work. So I don't know what got into me, but I went up to the experienced person, and I said, his name was Kapil, and I said, Kapil, I'm supposed to be a boss, but I don't know anything. You're considered to be God. Will you teach me? So he looked straight in the eye and said, I've had many such people like you come through these portals and be my boss.
Yeah.
Not one person has said that. Yes, you are like my son, and I'm going to teach you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty cool. And he did teach me, and we were friends right through. And he did treat me like a young son. But it taught me one thing, which is it's okay as you go through your life to kind of establish a relationship with people who are probably a generation or 2 generations younger, and learn from them. Who cares if you're the big boss? You got to learn from people who actually know their stuff more than you. Knowing stuff is not what determines success. It's actually how to use other people in order to deliver great value for
Well,
everyone.
we're going to come on to the whole that knowledge is probably highly perishable at the moment in the world that we live in. But I'm going to, that we're going to be curious with each other for this conversation. You just mentioned something already where you talked about, we've got, was it 5 demographics now working within an organization, and in your role as a CEO,
5 demographics.
I think 5 demographics within an organization, first time. So for you as a CEO, how do you leverage that younger generation? How do you make sure that you're in touch with them, which in turn might help you be in touch with your customer base as well, of varying ages?
So it's a great question, Adam. And one statement I would make is there are times when you have to behave like that 5th generation yourself. There are times when you should think like them, act like them. One of the things I talk a lot about is curiosity, because I think human curiosity has driven civilization forever amongst humans. And I think the world of AI, that's going to become even more important.
Yeah.
But the curiosity that a child has as one grows up, you lose it. And you shouldn't. In fact, society, including parents, shut down that curiosity, saying, don't ask so many questions. Can we go to the moon? No, I don't know whether we can go to the moon.
Why?
Why is the moon round?
But don't you love that? I mean, why is it that we lose that childlike curiosity where everything is why and everything is achievable? Do we get jaded very, very quickly? I don't know. Do we become the pragmatist? Or do we find that we then start to work within the boundaries that life throws at us?
So I think it's many, many reasons.
Yep.
Few of them you already touched upon. Few others would be, what's the reaction of people when you have someone who's considered to be a leader, sit with them and constantly only ask questions, making it very clear that they don't have the answers? How many leaders are willing to do that? Does business and society get to the point where you're told you as the big person, as you become bigger, are supposed to know everything? So don't exhibit ignorance. I'm a big believer that you have to exhibit ignorance if you want to be curious, and you have to ask questions. I think that's one of the problems.
Well, there's a humility and a vulnerability there, isn't
Correct.
there? And now I'm starting to talk about some of the 8 components of human-centered leadership. So, I'm listening for the clues that are coming out in this. Let me take you to 1997. Tell us what happened then, because obviously that was the pilot that came out of GE. Just give us the context or the background to that.
So we, a few of us as leaders were attending a GE Capital Financial Services global meeting. And we were a small financial services business of GE Capital in India at a time when the middle class was expected to rise, but it's still some time away.
Yep.
So, we were finding it difficult to really grow the business to become real scale in a world where GE Capital is becoming bigger and bigger. So you're really small. And if you want to make a big mark in a big company, you got to find a way to add big value. So we're sitting in this meeting. We are small as compared to the US and UK and France and Germany and all of that. And a number of the US colleagues of ours were talking about how difficult it is to hire people because G Capital is growing like gangbusters in those days. And a couple of us from the India business looked at each other and said, we can hire a lot of people. What's their problem? So I turned to one of them and said, so how many people are you looking for? He said, we want 20 people a month and we can't find them in Connecticut. I said, I can find 100. But they don't know anything. I'll get them out of the college. You got to teach them. Are you willing to teach them insurance and financial services and long-term care and healthcare and all of that? And they said, yeah. And they laughed and said, what are you talking about? I said, no, we'll hire people, you teach them, and then they'll provide services for the world. And they laughed and said, that's ridiculous. That's not going to work because telecom lines in India don't work, et cetera, et cetera. But GE being GE basically said, you can experiment. It's going to fail. If it fails, it's your fault. If it succeeds, it's mine.
If it's a great idea, it's
mine.
I know that.
And it worked.
Wow.
And it worked. And that's how we started with our first 20 people.
So where did that kind of risk element come in for you? That the art of the possible. That's what I'm hearing. Where did that come from in you?
Well, actually, it was even more than me. It was my boss at that time who made that punt and bet. And his view was, how difficult can it be? After all, what are these people doing? The first set of processes that we took on were data entry of credit card applications coming in on fax and mail.
The good old days.
Entering name, address, telephone number to a green screen, blue screen, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That's it. And we said, that can't be difficult. Now, we got to teach people the proper way to enter a zip code and blah, 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 and all of that. How difficult can that be? We can find some really smart people. And we said, that we know how to do. And we have 1 billion people to search.
Yeah, the pool is great. So that's interesting, isn't it, of getting raw talent in at the start. And one of the things that people are really struggling with at the moment is to identify and hire and retain great talent. What's kind of the standout lesson for you, having been a CEO for so long, in relation to getting good talent and also holding on to good talent?
Great question, because it's here
it's
and
the
now.
lifeblood of all business.
Plus, it's here and now as one of the challenges that is thrown up, and an opportunity. So I've always been a big believer that irrespective of the business you're in, and whatever I'm going to say is going to be even more true today, you got to create a learning culture. You got to create a culture where people come into the company saying, the reason I'm joining you guys is because I know I'm no longer in a university and I'm working, but I want to continue to learn. And you are providing me an opportunity to do work, get paid, and learn. That's pretty cool. So right from those days, our view was get great raw material, get raw material that is hungry and that is willing to learn, and then provide them a platform and a culture where learning becomes important, and provide them the tools to learn. And then you can conquer anything.
Wow.
And that's still true, and it's even more true today.
So I think there's a huge lesson there for everyone in relation to, as you say, how to manage talent. Let me go to the point that you were going to take over Genpact as CEO. How big was Genpact at that time, roughly?
As CEO.
Yeah.
So that's 2011.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's $1.1 billion.
Yes.
And about maybe 30,000 people.
Okay.
35,000 people, yeah.
And how did you feel when you were made aware that that was going to be your role? You were going to step into that top role?
So a little bit I knew it was coming.
Yep.
Without being, over, what is it called, presumptuous.
Yes.
I knew it was coming. And I was excited because I knew the business really well. I loved working with teams, building teams. I just like solving problems, particularly that our clients faced. One of the beauties of growing up with GE was that it was not one business. I mean, these days it's changed. But, we would have 7 meetings in a day with 7 different GE businesses. In the one case, we're talking about aircraft engines.
Yep.
In another case, we're talking about credit cards. And in a third case, we're talking about paying Julia Roberts her royalty from NBC.
That's an eclectic mix.
Right, that's a great mix. And you learn a lot. And you learn it across the globe, 100 countries. So in that ecosystem, to be the leader that actually continues to chart the course forward with a team that I loved and with clients that I could learn from, I said, this is like a job made in heaven. So I loved it.
I'm working with a lot of senior leaders all over the world, which is a huge privilege. And they all ask themselves the questions as they step into that very senior role or they step into the top role. In some ways, they reflect on the leader they are and the leader they want to become in order to be successful in that role. Did you make any deliberate pause in thinking, who am I as a leader and what is the leader I need to be in the role of CEO? Or was it more organic than that?
So one, I think it's a little bit more organic.
Yep.
You almost have to think about it every day. What is it that you want to change? I mean, there are certain core things that you never change. Your values, your groundedness in certain things, your views on certain beliefs. But many other things, you're constantly looking for adaptation. You're looking for new signals. And I'm a big believer that the most successful organizations in the last 100 years and the even more successful ones in the future are not those who picked the right strategy and stuck to it. Neither the ones who executed amazingly, but are the ones who constantly found ways to adapt. These days, the word pivot is used, but I still prefer the word adapt because it feels more continuous. Pivot seems like a 1 or 2 times in 5 years. I think adaptation is something that you got to get constantly. You got to, and which means you got to be humble enough to say, I don't have all the answers. It also means you need the ability to have what I call antennas out in the world to pick up signals. You obviously need some cleverness and smarts, and these days AI can help you with the black box to pick those signals up and figure out what it all means. Because a bunch of signals are going to be noise. But there may be a weak signal that in it is telling you something is going to happen 2 years from now, and this is the canary in the coal mine. Go after it or avoid it or whatever. So antennas out, pick up signals, process it, and then create an organization that goes from moving north one day to standing up the next day morning and say, okay, guys, we're going to go south. Why? We have new information. We think south is better. No problem. I told you to go north yesterday. I was wrong. Go south. So you got to be willing to say, I was wrong. Let's go south. Because all that matters is taking the right decision based on adaptation.
Now, this is a huge subject at the moment for all leaders, this outside in. So as the CEO, did you find that you spent more time being externally facing or more time being internally facing?
Oh, that is a choice, Adam, that I made.
Yeah.
I was very clear that I wanted to spend time outside. I wanted to spend time with clients. And I wanted to spend time with what I consider to be an ecosystem of players. Could be technology partners, could be people who are in the C-suite, strategy consultants, et cetera, to learn from them and figure out what they are seeing that I'm not seeing, and then bring that in. And I said, 1, I love doing it. 2, I think it gave me enough intellectual stimulation and satisfaction of my curiosity. And 3, I knew that I had an amazing team that was very strong in operations, delivery, execution, solutions. And I said, wherever I have any need for strength, I'll bolster that with new people in the team. But this is what I want to do. So I spent 50% of my time outside.
Right. Okay. And you talked about the bench strength that you had in your team. Did you have to work very, very hard in making sure you had the right people in the right place at the right time? So you had complete trust and you could give them all the autonomy and empower them to just do what they needed to do to allow you that 50% of
so again,
business.
Adam, the reality is that I had been in the company from the beginning, from the late 90s, until I took over in 2011 as the CEO. And I worked for the ex-CEO for, a bunch of that period. And we built the team together. So I knew the people. And we loved the business. We loved the team. So therefore, I took over a team that I kind of trusted and liked already. Having said that, the statement I made about adaptability applies to the team as well.
Right.
Is the team adapting? Is everyone in the team adapting to changes? Are they equally hungry that they were 10 years back? Are they equally curious and learning? And as some of them turned out to be not necessarily the kind of people you think are going to be successful going into the future, how quickly are you going to make the change? So one lesson learned, no surprise, is I should have made faster changes.
To that team?
To the team.
Right, okay.
I did make changes, but maybe slower than I should have.
There's another interesting question out of this as well, is that you went from being a peer to being the leader.
Yeah.
Now, tell me a little bit about that. What was it like to suddenly be the boss of the people that actually you were a peer of?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because one, it's different. and two different people react to it differently.
Yes.
But I think the first step is, are you going to really behave like this dominant, I know it all boss? And I wasn't going to be like that. I'm not like that. I hope I don't come across like that. And therefore, I was in the room as another peer of these people trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
So when you're in a problem-solving mode, together with, let's say, 5 of your team, you are an equal participant to that. Ultimately, you will decide whether a particular direction is the right direction. But the day you start the dialogue, you are just a peer. If you approach life that way, it actually is not that different. And that's the way I approached it always, which is we are a partnership. Yes, I'm the boss, but we are a partnership. Our job is to solve problems and create value for our stakeholders. And if there are choices to be made, I want to hear all your opinions. And I want debate on pros and cons. And then I'm going to guide towards a decision that I think is worth taking. But after having listened to you guys, by the way, it may be the opposite of what I thought it should be. But I've got convinced that I think it should be different. And then what I want is what Bezos often talks about, which is you disagreed, but now you commit.
Right. No, I love that. Let's talk a little bit more about that, because that's almost a contract of how you work together. So by all means disagree, but then we all sign up to the decision that is made, not having the water cooler moment where, sure. No, that'll never work. So how do you make sure that that is the culture and that is the discipline of your top team? Have the debate.
So one,
disagree.
you have to say it exactly the way you just said it.
Okay.
With no mincing of words. You got to live it yourself. So you got to show every now and then when the topic is right that you are changing your own decision that you were passionate about just yesterday. And I've had situations when the team has come to me and said, "But Tiger, you told us that you are actually very clear. We got to go north." Yeah, but guys, you just provided me new information. I'm fine. Let's go south. You don't have a problem changing? I said, no, I don't have a problem changing. I guess you also don't when the situation is right. You shouldn't change. So one, you got to walk the talk. You got to make it clear, then you got to walk the talk. And then every time someone does behavior that shows exactly those things, you should point them out to everyone, saying, what an amazing thing Mary did. She just took this decision and she changed and she was so adaptable and so on. And vice versa. Every time actually the person does not behave that way, to me, the most important thing when that happens is to tell people that that was wrong. Because if you only tell that person and that person tries to change or whatever, or you change that person, that's not a lesson learned by others. You got to reveal that to others. One of the challenges that I think the world generally has is people don't talk about the mistakes either they make, and they don't talk about the mistakes other people make. It's okay.
Or even celebrate them.
Yeah. I actually think sports is much better at all of those things.
Okay.
Sports teams are more open about, I screwed up today. I played badly. And the team lost because of me. That doesn't happen as often in business. It happens much more often in sports.
Yeah.
And great leaders create that culture. Great captains, great coaches create that culture.
We've got the wonderful Gary Ridge coming over to the country to sit exactly where you're sat, Tiger. And obviously he'll talk about the story of WD-40, which failed 39 times in order to become WD-40. And he's passionate about that, which is great. Listen, I didn't ask you actually to really describe what does Genpact do, because I just tell us that, because then I'm going to ask you some thoughts in relation to digital transformation and AI, because it's on everyone's lips right now. So just help everyone understand Genpact.
Yeah. So Adam, right now I'm only a board member.
Yep.
I retired from as the CEO of the company in February 2024. So it's been 11 months. The company's done really well under the new CEO, which is all fantastic. So I'll talk about what the company does, but it's continuously changing, as it should.
Might go south or might go north.
It's going north at the moment. It's going north, well north at the moment, which is why the team has done an amazing job. And by the way, the team has changed as well.
Yeah.
New people in the team, etc. The company basically grew out of GE, as I said, and in 2005, we spun off into an independent company to serve large global enterprises with business services, technology services, and data and analytical services. So what does that mean? So if in financial services, a business applies for a loan to buy a coffee machine because they're running a coffee shop for £50,000, then the bank gets the application, evaluates the credit, asks for certain documentation, and then approves the credit, and then gets the contract signed, and then funds the small business so that the new coffee machine can be bought.
Okay.
That whole end-to-end process, other than face-to-face interaction with the customer, can be done by a team that is central, that is global, that is connected by technology, and that uses technology to make this as seamless as possible.
Okay. So let me just remind people that now we're talking about a company with over 130,000 employees, 5 billion in revenue, 800 global clients in over 35 countries. Right. With that and 13 years of experience for you as the CEO, digital transformation is a topic or a headline that's been around for a long time, and it's back on everyone's lips because of AI. But what did digital transformation mean to you as a CEO of a business that was growing and growing and growing? What did it mean to you?
So to start with, Adam, it's what does it mean for our clients?
Yep.
Because we are there only because of the value we can create for our clients. Our business was entering into very long-term relationships. And when I say very long-term, I'm talking about multi-decade relationships.
Okay.
That outlast any leader, CEO, etc. And that value gets driven when those businesses are able to drive change in the way they operate that delivers value to their customers or consumers. So the starting point is always the business that you're talking to, let's say the bank, the same bank I talked about, that is lending to small businesses, the coffee shop down the street for a coffee machine. What is it that consumer or the business is wanting? They want to know whether their loan is approved. They want to know it literally instantly. They want to replace their coffee machine because it's dying. They want to attract customers back into the shop because they're not able to attract as many customers. They're competing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you boil that down, it's customer delight. It's give me an answer fast, and it's do it as fast as possible. And please say yes. Don't say no. Because if you don't give me the money, I'm going to go to another bank. And hopefully they'll lend me, but you're not going to give me. So in that situation, you step back as the partner of that bank and say, what can I as a service provider do to change the way you operate in that loan transaction? Can I digitize it completely? Can I make sure that the information you get is digital? The machine is able to read most of it. The machine actually recommends a decision. The machine actually says there's 2 pieces of information missing, sends out an automatic alert to the customer saying, you haven't provided your mobile phone number, I need it, gets that, and then provides an answer to the underwriter, says, I think you should say yes to this customer now. So think about a loan application that used to take 7 days. If you can say yes in 25 minutes to 7 days, what does it do to that coffee shop? The coffee shop gets a new coffee machine, gets more customers, can charge higher, I guess. The bank can charge a slightly higher interest rate on that loan.
Yeah.
Probably the bank is going to get better customers because the only coffee shop that is willing to wait for 25 days for a loan is the one that is not getting a loan from anyone else, which means it's not necessarily the best credit. So if you want the best credit, give answers fast. So you put all that together, the bank makes more money, the bank retains the customer is delighted.
Yes.
They get more business, they serve more consumers with coffee, et cetera, et cetera. And you can take that analogy to a Tesco ordering cheese from a Kraft Heinz. How do you make that process seamless, digitized, and almost predictable and instantaneous? Because what does Tesco want? It wants, every time I place an order, I want it delivered to me on time, in full, exactly the date and time I want it.
Right.
Any of those that change, I have a problem. I don't have cheese in my retail outlet. I lose customers. So guess what? I'm not ordering from you. I'm ordering from someone else.
So you're boiling it down to the critical key ingredients that are really needed by your customer. So how good have your listening systems got to be in relation to really understanding the user need or the end need? Because there you've very elegantly told me that kind of series, but how good have your listings got to be as a business?
Oh, you nailed it, actually. If you were to ask me the 2 or 3 qualities of organizations that I think determine success in the long haul, I already talked about one, which is adaptability.
Yep.
I talked about learning. But I'm going to learn and I'm going to adapt. But what do I learn and adapt is the third question. That's a third pillar. And that is, you got to go and ask what customers want, which means you got to listen.
Here's that curiosity again.
And you got to ask questions rather than give answers. So if you can live 80% of your life asking questions and listen to all the answers that you get, you're going to become cleverer, you're going to become more. So listening as an organization of 130,000 people, how do you create 130,000 people who constantly are asking questions and are listening? That's a trick. It's not easy. It's really tough.
That's a real learning culture, and lots of organizations aspire to that. You said that you listened to Greg's episode, which was a few weeks ago, where we were talking about the human side of AI. And the question was, AI, is it the superhero or the supervillain? What are your thoughts in relation to this AI environment that we find ourselves in at the moment?
So like every other technology wave that civilization has encountered, I would go back to the fire as a technology, as the axe as a technology, and stone grinders as a technology. This technology wave also can be for good and for bad, and it all depends on how many people use it for good versus how many people use it for bad.
And we're going to have a bit of both, right?
Yeah, we're going to have a bit of both. Whether it's nuclear or it's various other technologies, it's always been used for good and bad. Same is going to happen to AI. The optimist in me, and I'm an eternal optimist, is that the world is generally filled with predominantly good people. There are some bad actors. And the fight in the world is always good versus evil. And hopefully over time, good always wins. Unfortunately, there are going to be some casualties along the way, but good always wins. And the technology often is the same technology that is creating the problem that is used by the good to win versus the bad.
Okay.
I mean, if you take cyber and InfoSec as an example, the hackers are the people who discover the hacking done by bad hackers. And actually, bad hackers sometimes cross the bridge and say, actually, I want to be a good hacker. Right?
So and it's like the circle of life.
And the question is, can you just be, I don't even think it's one step, can you just be 0.1 step ahead of the bad guys? That's it. Same is going to happen to AI. I think AI is going to change the way education gets done. AI is going to change the way healthcare gets delivered. Yep. If you take 7 billion people in the world, I think I would argue 1.5 billion people, 2 billion people don't have adequate access to healthcare or education at a cost that they can afford. AI can make that happen at zero cost almost.
Yeah.
Knowledge. I've actually seen in places like India and Philippines where people who had no chance of getting formally educated, in fact, they don't know how to read and write, are self-learning themselves by listening and by watching. Because listen and watch do not require reading and writing ability.
Right.
So, you run into someone in India, and it happened recently, and the guy says, we, meaning India, just sent last year a spacecraft that landed on the other side of the moon. And I said, how do you know that? Because I knew he doesn't read and write. And he showed me his phone.
Right.
And he said, listen. I said, but how do you know what to listen to? He said, I just keep asking questions. That's it. So we are in a world where if you can keep asking questions, AI is going to give you a lot of the answers that is collective answer, and you can learn a lot.
There are a lot of leaders out there who are very aware of this AI evolution, revolution, you decide. But they're thinking to themselves, where do they start in their leadership thinking if they're not plugged into the AI environment itself? So kind of what would be your advice to any leader at the moment listening or watching who's thinking, I've got to start to consider how this impacts us as a business?
So one is they got to educate themselves.
Yeah.
That's a good starting point. That doesn't mean they have to know how to build AI systems. They don't have to be,
not going to turn into
build the
coders
next
and
chat
engineers.
GPT. No. How do I use it? What does it tell me? What are the kind of things I can use it for? What are the options I have? So that's one. So learn how to use it. Because AI is not going to replace humans. Humans are going to be replaced by other humans who use AI.
Right, okay.
Right? So can I become one of the people who use AI? Number two, again, because I said walk the talk, once you do that, you then insist all your people get a base understanding of what this AI can do and understand what it can do to your work and your service that you deliver. 3, if you've been listening a lot, you know what is it that my customer actually wants, and find a way to bring all these new ways of doing things to solve whatever the customer is looking for. I want my approval fast. When I order cheese, I want to get delivered right away. So can you help make that happen better, faster, cheaper using all these technologies? How do you get a culture where 100,000 people tomorrow morning after ChatGPT is launched say, I want to learn ChatGPT. I want to learn how to use it. And then experiment. You got to experiment. You can't say, let others experiment and then I'll jump in later. It'll become too late. You got to experiment. How do you pick what you choose? You pick the ones where you're solving a big enough problem for your client, you're delivering outcome improvements. Don't try and solve a problem where you say, I have 100 people doing this, I want to remove 10 people. That's small change. The problem with the world of AI these days is most people are talking about labor replacement, whereas actually it's going to deliver a lot of other value that you should focus on.
Okay. So that's a great kind of stream of advice in relation to how a leader maybe should consider the world of AI. But whilst I've got you here, I have so many questions. Let me ask you this question. We talk about vision sometimes being an antidote to volatility. So how does a leader start to think about the vision they should have for a business in this ever-changing AI-driven world? Because, you know, Genpact's vision must have constantly evolved over time. So what are your thoughts in relation to a leader's ability to set a vision in an era where everything changes almost on a daily, if not an hourly basis?
Yeah, so I don't know whether the word is specifically vision, mission. I mean, a lot of these words get intermingled.
They do.
Which one comes first, second, etc. So I would start with, I think you've got to have certain core beliefs and a vision of what your business stands for that I think is a little bit more timeless than changing rapidly. So for example, if your vision of your business is I'm here to constantly find value for my clients, and that's all I care about, everything else will fall in place. Of course, I'm here to deliver value to my shareholders, but that'll follow my amazing delivery of value to my clients. And I'll find a way to capture some of that.
That's almost the North Star, maybe.
Yeah, that's a North Star that probably doesn't change irrespective of AI. The way you get there changes, right? Underneath that, you have a strategy. Say, I'm going to make that happen by doing A, B, and C. That cannot be timeless. That you got to keep revisiting. There was a time when I guess one would argue a once in 5-year strategy exercise was considered to be the right thing to do.
Yes.
I wonder if it's the right thing to do these days.
Probably not.
Probably not. Should it be once in 3 years? Should it be every couple of years? Should it be more dynamic than that, which is, yes, I have a strategy, but I have to constantly watch that. What are the tweaks to my strategy I do every day?
Well, you talked about constant course correction.
Correct.
So maybe that is built into the system for it. I love this phrase that I heard from one guest who said, the map forever changes, but the compass never does.
That's a great one. It's actually very similar to a story I tell people about two boats. I'm rowing one and my friend is rowing the other, and we are in a competition. We leave New York City, the port of New York City, and we are told, your job is to get to Rome. Let's see who gets to Rome first. I guess Rome is coastal? I don't know. London.
We get the idea.
Let's do London. Let's do London. I forgot. Let's do London. One person jumps into the boat and without any planning starts rowing in the direction of north and east. That's it. The other person sits down and for the next 24 hours plans the route to London. Right? By the time the second person jumps into the boat and starts rowing, two things have happened. London has moved a little bit. So your plan is not going to work. And two, you think your plan is going to work, so you're not constantly looking for changing your plan. The first person knows that they don't have a plan, knows there is no such thing as a plan is going to work, knows that everything can change. So they're constantly figuring out from their compass, where is London? Where is London? Where is London? So they keep zigzagging their way to London. The first person goes straight and ends up in Dubai.
So some might say that's a better place to end up at the moment, but who knows? Well, I love a good story. I really do. I've got to ask you some questions in relation to culture, especially as I'm aware that Gary is going to be coming in as well. And you talked about the importance of a strong culture. But what was the importance of your role as CEO to that culture?
Oh, the CEO is ultimately the conscience keeper, the vision around the culture.
Yep.
And it all starts with, I think it's important to explain what is your culture and why do you want, what is the culture you want, but even more importantly, why.
Yes.
I actually think, I talked about how important it is to live life asking questions. I want to sub-bullet that and say, the most important question always to ask is why. Not the how, the who, the when, the where. Those are important questions.
Yeah.
But the overarching question is why. If someone says, Tiger, tomorrow morning, the sun is going to rise in the west. My reaction to that should be, I don't think it is, but it should be, tell me why you think the sun is going to rise in the west. And the reason I'm asking is because I thought the sun always rises in the east. I've always read it rise in the east. But there's a reason why you think it's going to rise in the west. I want to know more. The natural reaction of most of us, including me, would be, that's BS. It's going to rise in the east. Just shut up. You don't know anything. How many times do we actually miss an amazing insight about a new change just because we shut someone up because they're going to say something that is completely different? So how do you create that kind of a culture where people constantly ask why, and they're constantly excited about solving a problem? So every obstacle is excitement.
And to have leaders, by the way, who are happy answering the why and are capable of answering the why, because there's a double-edged sword there as well, isn't there? The ability to ask, but also the ability to answer that question in a way that...
Yeah. And then you've got to find a way that everyone in the organization at all levels imbibe it and live it and cascade it down, because one leader is not going to make that happen. So then you need that team and cascade effect. And if you do that, and by the way, this is not a one-time exercise, it's every day.
Well, now we're on to the whole, this is role modeling, isn't it? The power of the role model, and how do you help other people live the values day to day? How does it show up from the newest intern through to the CEO and everything in between? Let me ask you some more questions really about you, Tiger, because we chatted very briefly before we actually hit the record button, if that's a thing. And that's almost kind of your way of thinking about owning or renting and being nomadic. Just tell us a little bit about that spirit in you in relation to we can live anywhere, we can do anything, we can... Tell us.
So I think we are in a world where all of what you just said is possible. Some of us are fortunate, and I would consider myself fortunate to be able to, explore and experience. If you think about what AI is doing, AI is exploiting information. So the more you feed information of the past and history to AI, AI will recognize pattern by exploiting the information you fed it. AI doesn't explore. AI can aid exploration, but AI doesn't explore. AI will never take you to a place that no one has gone before. AI will not invent a brand new word in the English language. That has to be a human. So if exploration is what has driven human curiosity, and if experiences of that exploration is what drives you, then one of the dimensions of that is exploration of the world, exploration of different cultures. Why do people think the way they do there? Why do they eat that? Why do they like that food? And why do they speak this way? Why do they behave this way? Everything has a why to it. Everything has a history to it. And I love trying to understand that. And I believe asset ownership in general kind of holds you down. If you don't have assets, and that applies to companies as well, asset-light companies can pivot much faster because they're not tied down by assets.
Now, there's a great debate here because I'm using the UK as an example. We've all grown up with you should work hard in order to buy your own property on your flat and car, whatever that might be. So I'm hearing the groundswell of people are saying, well, hang on, let's be footloose and fancy free here. And you can rent, and then you can pivot, and you can adapt, and you can change. Have you always been like that, or is it more now in the latter stages of professional career?
I don't know about the specificity around this kind of asset ownership. We haven't owned a car for quite a few years now. Of course, we lived in New York City and London, etc. So,
well, you like the city, don't you?
We like the city. We like walking. So why own a car? And by the way, in the last X number of years, Ubers have come up, And if you do the math on this, the financial math, to travel around and move around using rented car, either rented from a rental company or from Uber, etc., financially overall works out cheaper.
Right.
Economically. So even the economics dictate why are you buying.
What?
Except if you are passionate about owning and driving, then maybe you should, and that's individual. But in general, asset ownership, just for the sake of owning an asset, creates inflexibility.
So do you think we'll actually see more and more people having this much more fluid approach to, we can rent and live anywhere. We can take advantage of technology, so we can just use utilities as opposed to owning utilities. Maybe that was a mindset shift.
Yeah, so I wonder, actually, it's a great question. I haven't thought of that. These kind of changes take generations to change, because these are deeply embedded. They're also in the psyche of people, and it depends also on your degree of security. So for people who say, I've got some money, I want to save that money. By the way, I don't think I'll save unless I have a motivation to save. And my motivation to save is to buy a home. So some people need that. And when you do that, you buy a home, you've locked it down. So I'm not going to be spending it on frivolous stuff because now I have a home. And therefore, I have security. I always go back home. So there is something to say about that. But if you're capable of living life without needing that security, then I think that kind of flexibility becomes. And are there going to be more people like that? I'll tell you what, there are going to be more opportunities available for alternatives.
Yes.
I mean, after all, Airbnb and
the ways of working,
those types of things, Uber are all alternatives to owning some of those types of assets. As they become more prolific, I would say more people might say, actually, you know what, I'm going to choose that.
Yes. So I'm asking this question because in some ways I'm coming full circle, because it's trying to understand the younger talent coming in. What are their aspirations? Do they want to put down roots and live for the next 15, 20 years in a certain city, or they want to be more nomadic? They want opportunity to travel around the world. And how do you tap into that? Which comes to another question. I'm working with lots of clients where the ways of working is still a hot topic, especially after the pandemic.
Right.
And I've got clients who have not really said anything to people about whether they should come into an office. I've got big Fortune FTSE clients who have downscaled on their real estate. And I've got clients who are now mandating you have to come into the office 5 days a week.
Yeah.
The jury is out in relation to what the answer is, because there's not one size fits all. But what are your thoughts as an outgoing CEO with all of that rich experience? What are your thoughts in relation to this ways of working conundrum that is flying around for so many businesses all over the world?
Yeah. So firstly, Adam, I think it depends on the kind of business you are. If you are in a warehouse and your job is to lead a team that is actually distributing orders that come in every minute.
Yeah.
Or you're in a pharmacy and you are writing prescriptions or dispensing prescriptions at a Boots. There is no such thing as remote work.
I remember. I'm from law enforcement. There was no.
Yeah. So I guess part of the answer is what industry, what kind of work.
Yeah.
But if you take that out, then a lot of the other kinds of work, particularly by the comments from some CEOs in industries, where I think the jury is not out. To me, the jury has decided.
Okay.
And the jury is the people who are consuming this, which is to say either extreme is bad. So to insist that someone has to come to office all 5 days of the week.
We're seeing it more and more now.
Just
Tiger.
because that's the way we all have grown up in an organization over the last 100 years. And that is the only way work gets done is ridiculous. I think it completely throws out of the window the fact that there are other ways of working. There is the ability to use technology that we could not use before. Those technologies, while they were available prior to the pandemic, they were tested during the pandemic. I think people got used to finding an efficient way of doing that. Therefore,
we had to.
Why would you want me to travel all 5 days of the week, 2 hours a day, in order to come to the office? And by the way, since my job involves talking to lots of people across many other offices across the globe, I'm sitting in a room and doing Zoom calls or Teams calls. Just sounds ridiculous. And it sounds to me that these are leaders who are very clear that they cannot change. These are unchanging leaders. I know my experience. I know the way people learn. This is the only way they learn. Now, things have changed. On the other hand, if there's a business that says, everything is remote and remote forever, I think they're going to miss out on human learning, social skills, communication skills, innovation skills, collaborative learning. All of that is real.
Yeah.
Now, to take that as the reason, therefore 5 days in office sounds like, can't you get both? Isn't there a way you can get a mixture of both? It's more difficult. It requires more orchestration. It requires more planning. So it requires hard work. So the best way to say, I don't want to do hard work, is go to one of the extremes.
Well, that ties in with John Amici, who was a guest, who said leadership is energy expensive. And it sounds like it's going to be energy expensive to work out what the answer is if it sits in between the two polar opposites. Let me finish off by two final questions. One is, what's next for Tiger?
Oh, I'm already in my next.
Tell us what it is.
If I go back to what I said, which is I live my life in order to learn. I live my life in order to keep asking questions and to experience the new. Post retirement from my corporate job as the CEO of Genpact, while I continue on the board of Genpact, I've joined a couple of other boards. I have become an advisor to a few private equity firms. And then I've become an advisor to BCG. And then I, provide, my, learning and teaching skills to groups of people who are, willing to take my time for that. I find those incredibly learning opportunities because the questions that people ask when you're in that dialogue, you say, whoa, I never thought of that question. So I love those teaching engagements. And I know, a couple of the upcoming ones, you and I are going to do stuff together.
We are going to do some stuff.
And I'm looking forward to that because I guarantee you there are going to be questions that we're going to say, oh, that question, no one has asked me before.
We'll both be curious.
Yeah.
We'll probably drive people mad with why questions. And this is I always think this is a slightly unfair question, but you are a lifelong learner. So what's been the best piece of leadership advice that you've given or received?
Actually, so many.
What's kind of front of mind? I'll take the one that's front of mind.
So I would say two that kind of have some connection to each other.
Yes.
So many years ago, one of the leaders came to me and said, look, you know that both of us know that on this topic, the answer that you have is the right answer. And I was the risk leader at that time. We are not going to be changing our policy to allow this kind of lending to happen. You know that. I know that. We both know that. However, the marketing and sales guy wants to go there. And the way you've come across to them is over my dead body. And that has created a schism between the two of you where, that person now feels you're going to say no to everything.
Right.
And you feel as though anything and everything that person brings is crap. Can you allow the person to discover that it's a bad thing to do by helping them discover it rather than telling them that?
Okay. This is the teach, don't tell element.
Yes. And I said, oh, that's interesting. But you still don't want me to actually end up lending. He said, no, I don't want you to do this. So the trick is take the person down the garden path, the wrong fork in the road, turn every stone so that they can see actually it's a bad path, but allow them to continue and walk with them.
To come to the right conclusion.
At some point in time, they'll say, actually, let's go back.
And then you don't have to say, I told you so. That is exactly it.
and then the second learning I had was, I don't think there's anyone in the world who can say that they are good in everything.
Yep.
And if you're the CEO, you have potentially a chance of thinking that you know everything. The reality is, neither do you know everything, nor you're good at everything. You got to really figure out what are you really good at and what do you really want to do and what are the things you're actually not good at or you don't want to spend time on.
Yeah.
And then surround yourself with people in your team who are actually damn good at that and love doing that. So create a mosaic where the mosaic is actually amazingly powerful. Individually, you guys can't function. I mean, that's a team again. It's a sports team.
It's the high-performing element, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love all of that. Tiger, listen, thank you so much for coming into the studio. I really appreciate it. I hope you've had fun. You've done a lot of these, so
Yeah,
that's the acid test,
but
right?
you took it in almost like a tapestry in so many different directions and multi-dimensions.
I know. We could go anywhere. And we did. Listen, thanks for being a superstar. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I love doing the show, and I would love to watch it in this ambiance and see how it feels and looks.
Well, I'll be sending you the link very soon. You can do just that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Join us again next week for more curiosity and insight with the Leadership Enigma. We'd love to hear your comments on today's show as well as suggestions for future topics and guests. Get in touch with me on LinkedIn or visit us at www.leadersenigma.com. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe on all your major podcast platforms and on our dedicated YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining the community.